Here we go. Another wonderful week. Another wonderful week of learning Tanya together. We are in chapter 1. We are going to be concluding today, God willing, chapter 1. And we are at a very exciting juncture. We're at a very exciting place in Tanya. What we've had until now is the Alter Rebbe got us into this whole long-winded, pretty scholarly exploration of what's a tzaddik and what's a rasha and what's a beinoni, and we're quoting a lot of pieces of Talmud, and there's a lot of analysis, textual analysis, and it's very long-winded. Yeah, is that how you pronounce it? But that isn't really the style of Tanya. Tanya is not really that type of Talmudic analysis. That's not the style of the book. In a certain way, Tanya really takes off where we are up to right now, the end of chapter 1. The Alter Rebbe simply wanted to get us to one place. The Alter Rebbe wanted us to shift, to make a real mental shift. A mental shift from focusing on behaviors, on the superficial level of the human experience, and to start focusing a little bit deeper. Stop looking only at performance and start looking as well at the inner workings. Look under the hood. Not to say, and again, this is very important, not to say that behavior and performance is not important. Ultimately, it's of course very important. Not only it's very important, but it's ultimately what matters, right? If you have a good car and you have all these amazing features in the car, top car, but if it's not going to drive, how good are all those features? You understand what I'm saying, right? Functionality, performance at the end of the day is what matters. That's where the rubber hits the pavement. But the inner workings, if we want to understand ourselves, if we want to enter the journey of ourselves and to grow and to develop ourselves, we have to go deeper. And that's what the Alter Rebbe wanted us to go to realize that we really need to get a good understanding of who we are on the inside and to grow and to be deeper people, to be deeper Jews from a deeper place. So what the Alter Rebbe is going to do in the next few chapters, the Alter Rebbe is going to give us a grand tour of ourselves. You know, doctors, we have a few doctors here in this Zoom room. The first thing that doctors do, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but the first thing you do in medical school is gross anatomy. Doug, am I right? First year is gross anatomy. Yeah. Because before you learn how to manipulate a body and how to fix things in a body and how to connect things in a body and all these types of stuff, you got to simply understand what's a body and how does it work and what are all the nuts and bolts and what are all the moving pieces, etc. How they interface with each other. And the Alter Rebbe is going to do that. The Alter Rebbe is a spiritual doctor, a doctor of the soul. And the Alter Rebbe is going to take us on a tour of the spiritual gross anatomy, which is a very powerful, it's very empowering. It's very interesting. It's good stuff we'll learn, God willing. We'll really just get to know ourselves. We'll get to know how we function. So without any further ado, page 27. We're still in the same handout from the past few classes. We are still in chapter 1, and God willing, we'll finish chapter 1, which means next week we'll have a new handout. Top of page 27, part 3 of this chapter, the doctrine of two souls. The Alter Rebbe writes, let us explain the matter of man's inner world. The following is based on what Rabbi Chaim Vital of blessed memory writes in Shari HaKadusha and in Eitz Chaim, section 50, chapter 22. Now is not the time, let me just say, now is not the time to get into the biographical sketches, but this is one of the most classical works of Kabbalah, the Eitz Chaim and Shari HaKadusha. These are the teachings of the holy Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria. So this was written down somewhere about 500 years ago, a little bit more than 500 years ago. Here we go. Here's the big idea. Every Jew, both tzaddik and Russia, which means it doesn't matter what type of Jew you are, what level you are in the spectrum. Every Jew possesses two souls, an animal soul and a divine soul. And as the verse states, right, we'll get some scriptural sources here. And the souls, it says it in the plural, which I have made. This verse is a verse in Isaiah. And if you look at the context, it's very clear that God is talking about a singular person. God is not talking about a community or about a collective. God is talking about one individual. And about one individual, God says, and the souls which I have made. So it's clear that within a human being, there's not one soul, but two souls. These are two complete, distinct, and independent souls and life forces within us. Let's stop here. Let's unpack this a little bit. This is pretty big news. We got two souls. Let's start with trying to understand, what does it even mean to have a soul? You know, the word soul is definitely a buzzword. It's a pop word, you know. We all have a soul. We got to treat our soul. We go to Soul Cafe. We have soul food. We have soul experiences. What's up with the soul? What does that mean? So what we have to realize is like this. You know, I remember I was once at a hotel and I saw there's like a little flyer on the desk in the hotel that the hotel had like a little spa or some type of service on the main floor. So they had like a little paper that said, treat out your soul and come to our spa. And it got me thinking, you know, like, what do they think soul means? What does it mean? How does a spa treat a soul? Is that, you know, like we tend to think anything that feels good is good for the soul. What's a soul? So let's keep it very simple, right? We don't want to overcomplicate matters. We could do that, but that's not the point. Very simple. Anything beyond the dead body is a soul. Or in other words, souls, we'll start the other way. Bodies are not alive. Bodies don't have any life. A body is naturally inanimate, static. Bodies are dead. The only reason why a body is alive because there's a soul that lives within the body, pulses through the body. And this soul gives the body life. And the body comes to life. And the body, number one, biologically is functional. The body is now able to move, able to see, able to smell, able to hear. That all comes from the soul. Bodies don't think, bodies don't smell, souls do. Souls do it using the hardware of the body. A nose is a good hardware to smell with. But it's the soul smell. The body has no life. So on a biological level, that's a soul. And also on any other level. When we go a little bit deeper on the psychological level, we all have feelings. We all have temperaments. We all have impulses. We all have a drive. We all have motives. These all come from the soul. The Alter Rebbe says, and this is not a big idea from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe didn't make this up. This is a Kabbalistic idea. But the Alter Rebbe focuses in on this, puts the spotlight on this idea. And the Alter Rebbe says, we don't have one soul, we have two souls. The names of these souls is animal soul and divine soul. We have a lot to learn about these souls. We have to meet these souls. But it's so important just to have this clarity. There's not one you, there are two yous. There are literally two yous. There are two separate, full, independently functional yous, versions of you that both live in the same body. You know, it's a very empowering thought because we all have these experiences where we can sometimes feel very confused. We sometimes feel like we're not real. We're not being honest with ourselves. Because maybe we'll have a moment in life where we're feeling very, very giving. We feel very altruistic in this moment. And we feel, we're in the right groove and we're doing the right things and we're being kind. And all of a sudden, spirituality is appealing to us and a mitzvah is appealing to us and Judaism is appealing to us. And the next moment, we're literally back to our weak selves. We constantly fluctuate day to day, minute to minute. We make the right choices, we make the wrong choices. And not only do we fluctuate, sometimes we're both at the same time. Sometimes we're a living paradox. We're doing something, and at the very same moment that we're doing it, we know that we shouldn't be doing it, and we know that we really don't want to do it, but we do it anyways, and we enjoy that we're doing it, but I really don't want to do it. What's wrong with us? Are we crazy? It's the Alter Rebbe says, no, you're not crazy. You're just a little bit complicated. You don't have one soul, you have two souls. And not only you have two souls, but you have two diametrically opposite souls. They're totally different. Life is all about navigating this journey with two souls, with two identities. And that's really, this becomes one of the most important ideas in Tanya. We all have two souls. We don't have one soul, we have two souls. We have two life forces, two drives, two everythings living within us 24/7. So let's get to meet our souls. You ready to meet our souls? Soul number one. Here we go. For the rest of chapter 1, we will learn about the first soul, which we call the animal soul. Chapter 2, we'll learn about the divine soul or the godly soul. All right, divine soul, godly soul, kind of the same thing. So let's begin. Let's continue inside. The animal soul. Before we read, I just want to make a little comment. We're going to feel, you're going to see this. Tanya is going deep. We're in the deep end. We're in the thick of things here. And what happens when you go deep is that it forces you to rethink a lot of terms which we have a conventional understanding of these terms. But when you go deep, the conventional, basic, superficial, sloppy definitions go out the window, right? We really have to we have to be ready to kind of rethink our common association with terms, our common associations with terms. All right, that's just a general comment. Let's begin. I want to read this piece, and it's going to be a little bit confusing, then we'll explain. All right, let's first read. The animal soul. The Alter Rebbe writes, one soul stems from the negative forces known as Kelipah and Sitra Achra. That means other side. Klippa and Sitra Achra. I'll explain what that means in a moment. Meaning, i.e., that which is not holy. This soul is titled the animal soul, or sometimes as the natural soul. This animal soul is embodied in your blood, energizing your body. As the verse states, the soul of the flesh is in the blood. From the animal soul, which is invested directly into the body, all the bodily temperaments arise. Let's stop there, and now let's talk a little bit about it. Animal soul. What's the animal soul? It's actually pretty simple to understand the animal soul because we are all very in tune to this soul. From the very moment the baby is born, they are 100% in tune to the soul. Animal soul. Well, so let's, the words animal soul itself is a clue what the animal soul is. It doesn't mean that we share the same soul as an animal. That's not what it means. But it means that this soul is animalistic in nature. So let's try to think about that. Within the animal world, within the animal kingdom, there's such a spectrum of animals. You have some very vicious and deadly animals. And then you have some animals that are just so cute and so kind, so cuddly. So what makes them all an animal? What makes them all equals? What is the ultimate drive to an animal? What's life about for an animal? What would you say? Feel free to unmute.
Survival.
Survival. Mm-hmm.
Food, survival. Oh, right. It's not just food. Survival. Every animal wants to survive. It's instinct. Instinct of an animal. From the moment an animal is born, they all want to survive. Anything else? Any other ideas? What do you say?
Reproduction.
Reproduction. So not just I want to survive, I want to reproduce. I want to perpetuate myself. I want to perpetuate my species. I think that's basically what makes an animal's life a life. What do animals live for? Self-survival, self-perpetuation. An animal asks itself only one question, and it doesn't even know that there's any other types of questions to ask. Animals say, what do I need? And what do I like? And what do I want? And life is about chasing after whatever serves those purposes. And by the way, this is not just animals, this is nature. The number one rule of nature is that everything is looking out for its own survival. Everything has mechanisms, how to protect itself from the predators and how it should outpace any competition. Nature is very capitalistic and right? That's nature. Nature is capitalistic. Every plant is looking to survive. Every plant is looking to outrun and outpace any other plant. In a forest, right? That's not just in the animal world, also in the green world, right? In the world of plants and vegetation. There's a lot of competition. You want sunlight. There's real estate in the forest. Life is about one thing, surviving and you outpacing, you winning, you surviving and you being the strongest. That's the number one rule of nature. And the animal soul is very natural in that sense. The animal soul is called an animal soul because that's the agenda of the animal soul. The animal soul has only one agenda. That agenda is me. Each of our animal souls think only about itself. It's naturally and unbelievably single-mindedly self-centered and self-absorbed. And we're born with a very healthy animal souls. The animal soul is the reason why we all feel hungry when we are hungry. We're hungry. The animal soul senses a threat. We need to survive. We need food to survive. We're going to go get food. At the age of 1 week old, the animal soul does that by crying at 2 a.m. The animal soul doesn't start thinking 1 second. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. I know that I'm hungry, but it's not a big deal. I could survive till 6 a.m. Maybe, we could just wait it out till 6 a.m. Big deal. We're allowed to be a little bit considerate to mom and dad. It's been a little bit rough, a new baby in the house. The animal soul is not mean. It just doesn't even know what you're talking about. There's somebody else, considerate of somebody else. What do you mean? There's nobody else. There's only me. Self-centeredness. That's the animal soul. The animal soul asks only one question. Do I want it? Will it help me? Will it make me feel good? If the answer is yes, I want it. If not, I'm not interested. The animal soul is nothing but an ego, one big ego. Self-obsessed, self-absorbed, self-centered. Let me ask you a question. Is the animal soul bad? No, not bad at all. Not bad at all. Let's get that very, very clear. Animal soul is not bad. It's not our enemy. In fact, I think we all understand that it's very important that we all have a very healthy and functional and robust animal soul. The Talmud says that without the animal soul, none of us would get married and none of us would ever buy a house and none of us would ever get a job. We all understand that the ego is a very important motivation in life, and we all understand that we all need to be looking out for each other, right? We can't be a doormat. We need to take care of ourselves. And so let's just make it very clear. The animal soul is not our enemy. We don't have anything against it. We're just stating the facts. It's self-centered. Let me ask you another question. It's not bad. Could the animal soul do good? Could the animal soul do a mitzvah? What's the answer? Of course it could. So how does a self-centered animal soul do good things and give charity and do mitzvahs? What do you say? As long as the animal soul could be convinced that there is something in it for me, I'm game. For example, animal souls know how to be nice to people. Do you know when animal souls start being nice to people? When they realize that life is not so good when you are nasty to other people. Understand? If I'm nasty to everybody else and I'm a narcissist, I'm not going to have any friends. So what does the animal soul say? It's in my best interest to be nice to other people.
May I ask something real quick?
Sure, of course, go ahead.
Since Max mentioned like reproduction, the first mitzvah is that we be fruitful and multiply. Wouldn't the animal soul fulfill that way already a mitzvah, even if it's for the self?
Yeah, sure. We don't have a problem if animal souls do mitzvahs. And there's a lot of mitzvahs that make sense to us. Yeah. Any mitzvah that appeals to you, the animal soul is game. Let me put it this way. The animal soul of a baby doesn't care for money, right? Babies rip up $100 bills. Why? Because to them, it's a piece of paper. The moment the animal soul understands the value of money and that money is good for you, the animal soul starts liking money. So the animal soul is very easy to figure out. The moment it feels that this is important for survival, life is going to be better if we do this, if we do that, then it does it. But it always begins, this is the very important point, the animal soul always begins with one thought process. What's in it for me? Could the animal soul do a mitzvah? Of course. Could the animal soul care about God? For sure. But it will only care about God after it gets this question answered. What's in it for me? I'm Jewish, I should do a mitzvah, no problem. What's in it for me? Oh, you convinced me that there's something good for me. It'll bring meaning to my life. It sounds good. There's a sense of community. I don't know what. God won't send me to hell. Whatever type of motivation works for the animal soul. Okay, then it's it. But we have to realize the animal soul, everything is based on ego. It's one big flow of ego. The Tanya says that the animal soul literally flows through our blood, and blood becomes the physical matter, the physical substance that carries the spiritual soul, and that's why everything works. Blood. If you ask a doctor why is blood important, they'll say blood is important. Whatever, blood is, they'll give you the biological answer. But on a mystical perspective, the blood is the seat of the animal soul. The animal soul flows through our entire body and gives us actual life. We're able to move our fingers, everything, because of the animal soul, which is the source of life. And on the most biological, on the most basic level, most basic biological level, it gives us life. Okay. The animal soul is not bad, but the animal soul is also not holy. Let's read the first paragraph in this section again. I wanted to now talk about this. One soul stems from the negative forces known as Klippa and Sitra Achra. The other side of what? Meaning that which is not holy. Let's define these terms a little bit. What does Klippa mean? What does Sitra Achra mean? These are very important terms. We're going to be talking about these terms a lot in Tanya. And really, chapter 6 is really where the Alter Rebbe brings us into the world and explains to us what Klippa means. But let's explain it at least basically now. Klippa is the opposite of holiness. That's a term used in Kabbalah, in mystical lingo. There's holiness, and then there's the opposite of holiness. That's Klippa. Or it's sometimes called Sitra Achra, the other side. The other side. What do you think? Just what does your mind feed you? What ideas, what feelings, when you hear the word negative forces, unholy, the opposite side of holiness, impure? What would you say the nature of that is? Go ahead, Hillary.
Dark. Look for my
Dark, right?
Malevolent, nefarious, all those things.
Nefarious, right? Exactly. It feels very dark, right? Okay, very good. What else? Does everybody agree with Hillary that these terms conjure up very dark and like negative, demonic, satanic, that type of
I
stuff?
think of evil.
Evil, right? That's what it seems. Is the animal soul any of that? Is the animal soul dark and nefarious and diabolical and cruel? Here's going to be our first time doing it. We have to change definitions. We have to rethink the way we think about these terms. In the world of Kabbalah, Kelipah, impurity, negative forces, opposite side of holiness is not necessarily bad. All right, this is so important. In our world, the word bad, right? Conventional language, conventional wisdom. Conventionally speaking, the word bad means cruel, evil, nefarious, diabolical, murderous. In Kabbalah, it means one thing and one thing only: not holy. It could even be doing good stuff. It could be good for society. It could be nice. It could be pleasant. Not holy, Klippa. So what makes something holy? Right? We throw around the word holy very loosely these days, very cheap. Everything's holy, everything's this, what a holy thing, everything's holy. We tend to think that holy and good are synonyms. They're like the same thing. Anything good is holy, anything kind is sweet, it's nice, it's productive. So let's understand these terms here. If any of you are familiar with Hebrew, the word Klippa, it's a word in modern Hebrew as well. A Klippa means a shell or a husk or a peel. A banana has a Klippa. A coconut has a Klippa. An apple has a Klippa. And a peanut has a Klippa. You get my drift? It means a peel. That's the literal meaning of the word, or a shell. And that's also what it means in the language of Kabbalah. Very simply stated. Klippa is a reality that we all have in life, that we experience in life. Klippa is a condition. It's even like a measurement. You can measure how much oxygen there is in the atmosphere. You can measure how cold it is, there's temperature, all this type of stuff. Klippa is a spiritual measurement. Klippa is the reality of God's existence being something indiscernible. Let me make that very, okay, let me simplify that. God is really all over the place. We say this in our prayers every single day. We say the words Ein od milvado. There's nothing other than God. The obvious question is, what does that mean? There's nothing other than God. I'm here. I'm here. I'm something else other than God. And this house is here. And there's grass outside. And all of you are here. Well, what do you mean there's nothing else but God? So the simple answer is everything is God. You are God. You are an extension of God. This whole world is really one big God. Meaning not a God. It's God. It's an extension of God. This is all God's reality. The obvious question is, then why don't I feel it? Why don't I feel like I am an extension of God? Why don't I look around the world and feel that this world is constantly being created by God and literally is God? Why don't we feel God? Why don't we feel God? We walk outside, we feel sunshine. We go outside, we feel the cold air, we feel rain. We don't feel God. Why not? It's very simple. Why not? One word answer. It's called Kelipah. Kelipah is an ingredient that God added into creation that hides his existence. This world is a world filled with Kelipah. And that is why God is incognito. Even if I tell you that there's God all over the world, okay, either you'll accept it or you won't accept it. But God will never be as real as raindrops. And that is called Klippa. Klippa is an ingredient that God added into nature that suppresses his reality. And what that does is it allows us human beings to have an ego and to have a certain self-identity, to feel independent. If you would always feel that everything is really God, and if you'd always feel God's awareness, it would be pretty difficult to have an ego. So Klippa allows our ego to emerge and allows us to be self-centered and allows us to live a life outside of God and to live a life independent of God. That's Klippa. The animal soul is a soul of Klippa. The animal soul does not have a God, not because it's an agnostic. It's not because it's like anti-God. It's apathetic. It's indifferent. I don't know God. I never heard of God. You know what I know of? I know of money. I know of food. I know of survival. I know of pleasure. I don't know God. You understand? That's Klippa. How does that sound? Make sense? Okay, we'll learn a lot more about Klippa and holiness in chapter 6. That's the basic idea. The animal soul is not bad, but it's not holy. There's no pure goodness pulsing through it. There's only one radio frequency in the life of the animal soul, and that is me, ego. What do I want? What makes me feel good? And that's what I do. And to make it very clear, I'll get to your question in a moment, Gail. The animal soul could be an amazing person. All right, this is not an indictment of the animal soul. We're not being critical of the animal soul. We're not saying it's bad. We're not admonishing it. We're not rebuking it. We're just saying a reality. It's Klippa, and therefore it is motivated entirely by one agenda, and that agenda is its own ego. All right, go ahead, Gail.
Aren't we supposed to check our ego? I mean, keep it within.
Okay, what to do with our ego is later in Tanya. We're not there yet. Now this is gross anatomy, right? We're just learning what we've got. What to do with it is later. Right, okay. We're not here to. Okay. The Alter Rebbe now, let's continue reading. The Alter Rebbe now is going to continue telling us a little bit about what the life of the animal soul is? Well, what does it give us? What are the temperaments? What are the channels? What are the outputs of the animal soul? So the Alter Rebbe continues. We're on the top of page 28. The negative temperaments. The negative temperaments stem from the animal soul's negative 4 spiritual elements. Okay, so there's an idea here. There's an idea which also philosophers have spoken about, and it's an idea in Jewish mysticism. Everything in this world, all physical matter, is made up of 4 elements. Could be you've heard of this. The 4 elements is fire, air, water, and dirt or earth. And everything in this world is a composite of these 4 elements. Let's not get lost in that. That's not the point here. The Alter Rebbe says, quoting from the Kabbalists, the soul also has these same 4 elements, but in a spiritual form. All right? And we can divide all of the outputs of the animal soul into these 4 elements. So let's go through them, namely. And these are, I think we'll all be very familiar with these because all of us have an animal soul. And this is part of walking around with a soul which has a very healthy ego. And even if it's not a healthy ego, right, we're not talking about a healthy self-confidence, a healthy ego. Even somebody with a low self-confidence still has a very healthy ego. Understand? Ego and self-confidence are not at all corollaries. Okay, let's continue going. Namely, A, anger and arrogance. You know of that? You ever experienced that? Anger and arrogance stems from the element of fire in the animal soul. An overstated self-image, which leads to arrogance and anger, reflects physical fire's tendency to rise upward, right? Fire goes up, and even colloquially, we all understand that anger is like fire, right? Anger, fire, you get red, right? There's all these, I think there's a lot of idioms that connect the two. So it's anger and arrogance, that's considered the fire of the animal soul. B, seeking physical gratification and pleasures stems from the element of water in the animal soul, reflecting the physical reality that all pleasures are ultimately cultivated from water. Water is a source of good taste in fruits and vegetables. What makes a fruit very pleasurable is if it was watered properly. If not, it's going to be dry and tasteless. And in general, good color, vibrancy, the warmth of summer, all these things, all physical pleasures are associated with water. Just a little bit of an interesting observation. If you look around planet Earth, the places of the strongest locations, the strongest destinations of physical pleasure is always around water, right? The beach cities, Miami Beach, oh, that's a place of tremendous physical pleasure. People go there just to spend 2 weeks and just, right, bask in a lot of physical pleasure. So physical pleasure and self-gratification, that all has to do with the element of water in the animal soul. Okay, let's continue going. Now, C, silliness, mockery, boasting of virtues that you don't have, and other worthless discussions that benefit neither body nor soul. These stem from the element of air in the natural soul. Air represents lacking substance. So the animal soul many times engages in stuff which lacks substance, like we say in English, full of hot air. And that means, right, it's just air, there's nothing there. So air represents these temperaments, which are substanceless. And D, laziness and depression, not clinical depression, I mean worrying, being worried, stems from the element of earth in the animal soul. Animal souls and egos, it's the natural result of an ego, makes us sometimes get very heavy, like earth weighs us down. Earth is stationary. So sometimes we get too heavy for ourselves. That's what we call laziness and depression which means just getting very worried. Animal souls know how to get very, very worried. Animal souls love worrying. Egos need to always feel in control. So they can't let go. You need to worry about everything. There's COVID, you get obsessed with COVID. You even see this throughout. I'm not saying these are not legitimate things to get worried about, but the animal soul loves worrying. We'll learn about it later on in Tanya. It's a very important thing to identify where these impulses, where these voices are coming from. If you look throughout history, you will see every single civilization and every single time found something to worry about. Either it was a legitimate thing to worry about, or sometimes it was a not legitimate thing to worry about. But it's a fact of history. Every single era of human civilization found a reason to believe that their era is going to be the last, is going to be the end of human civilization. We're going to run out of food. We're going to run out of this. We're going to run out of that. There's going to be a climate, the world's going to burn up. We're going to, right? All the ice is going to melt. I'm not saying these are illegitimate concerns, but the human condition that we just need to find what to get worried about and we just get obsessed over it, that is an animal soul thing. It's very interesting. There's a lot of psychology to study over here, but we're not going to go there. I have a question for you. Let's think about this for a second. The Alter Rebbe said that all these are negative temperaments. Are all these really negative? Some are maybe negative. You could look at them. A lot of them aren't. If somebody is seeking physical gratification and physical pleasures, is that negative? Somebody is arrogant, saying if you're hurting other people, then okay, it's not good. But if somebody just happens to be a little bit arrogant, and it's not false arrogance, they actually have what to boast. They really do have what to be proud of. Is that negative? We're starting to see here. The word negative doesn't mean what we think negative means. We think negative means that you're hurting somebody, right? You're hurting society. You're causing damage. In the world of Tanya, negative, there's only one criteria for negative, for good or bad, for negative or positive. Is it holy? Where's it coming from? Is it coming from a place of goodness, or is it coming from a place of ego? If it's coming from a place of ego, maybe what the result is good, but it's coming from a place of ego. That's not good. It's negative. Understand? Okay, we're almost at the end of the chapter, but the end of the chapter is a little bit heavy. Should we stop the class here? Am I giving you a headache? Or we should keep on going? Let's keep on going. I want to finish the chapter. I think it's important to finish the chapter today. Let me summarize what we've said until now. Everything we've said until now, you should know, is not controversial at all. In fact, any social scientist, any anthropologist is going to tell you the exact same thing. Every single thing in nature, human, animal, or plant, has one agenda and one agenda only, which is seeking out its own survival. That's the human experience. A social scientist will tell you that there's no such thing as a human being doing absolute pure goodness. No such thing. This is what a social scientist will tell you. That's what Freud said. Pop psychology is to say nobody's capable of any real good. We do good only for our own only for ourselves. We do good so that we could feel good. We do good only to self-perpetuate. Understand? So really what the Alter Rebbe told us until now, that all of us have a roaring, ferocious, healthy ego within us. That is actually pretty standard stuff. All right? Which means every human being, every Jew, we're talking about Jews here in Tanya, we all have an ego and we are motivated tremendously by that ego. And we all see that in life. And even the ego is always compelling us to do certain things and make certain choices and even to do a lot of good stuff. We love being good. If the ego feels good doing good, it does good. The moment the ego doesn't feel good doing good, it stops doing good. Here's the example. Does an ego give charity? Sure. Giving charity, you should know, feels very, very good. Psychologists say this. It really feels good to give charity. It's a very healthy thing. Here's the only thing. Just because we like giving charity, we all know there's a place when we won't give charity anymore. The moment it pinches us, we're not going to give charity anymore, right? We're not going to give charity if it's money that we actually feel that we need right now. The animal soul could do a lot of good, but it's always going to be, first and foremost, is me, my ego, my, right? I'm not sacrificing myself. This is all for me. If it works against me, I don't do it anymore. Right? Very simple. All right. Hi, how are you? But the Alter Rebbe concludes with something which is a quite astonishing statement over here. That there's a specifically unique quality. Only Jews have this. All right. This makes this a little bit controversial. Some people don't like hearing this type of stuff, but it's Torah. That's what the Torah says. Anybody with a Jewish soul is unique. That even with this animal soul that has this whole ego, your animal soul actually has within it some absolute pure goodness, which means there's a force of good within a Jewish animal soul, which is not motivated by the ego. It's motivated only by good. And therefore, not only is the action good, is it a good behavior, but it's also good in motive. It's good only for the sake of good. It's not good for the sake of an ego. It's good for the sake of good. The Talmud says that there are 3 traits of a human being. It's a beautiful piece of Talmud. The Talmud says, Simonei Yisrael. What are the signs of a Jew? What are the signs of a Jew? Sounds like something an anti-Semite would say, right? How could you sniff out a Jew? The Talmud says every single Jew has 3 trademarks. Compassion, benevolence, and shame. Every Jew is naturally compassionate. Every Jew is naturally benevolent. We do good. We do kindness to other people. And every Jew is naturally bashful, which means we are self-aware. We know when we're doing something wrong, and we feel that bashfulness inside, which is a very healthy thing to have. Jewish law even says that if you find a Jew who is a disgusting person and is lacking these 3 traits in a very noticeable way, Jewish law says you got to maybe do some homework. Not necessarily is this actually a Jewish person. I'm saying that's how serious we take it. These 3 traits don't stem from the ego. These 3 traits stem from an actual place of pure goodness in the animal soul of a Jew. And even though the animal soul is Klippa, it's not holy, and it's egocentric, it's self-centered, even so, it has a little bit of raw goodness that comes through the animal soul. Let's read that. We're at the bottom of page 28. The positive temperaments. The Alter Rebbe says, but also the positive temperaments, which the Talmud testifies all Jews are naturally born with, such as compassion and benevolence, stem from the animal soul. Okay. But I thought that the soul is Klippa. I thought that the soul has this condition called Klippa, which totally suppresses and conceals any godliness, and therefore there's only an ego. So the Alter Rebbe says that the Klippa level in the animal soul of a Jew is a little bit lower, right? That's how we have to think about it. There's a Klippa level, which is maximum. It absolutely conceals God. And then there's a level of Klippa. It's a peel that covers God, but it still lets a little bit of it through. It's a little bit transparent. You know, certain peels, like a banana, is thick, and you don't see any banana. Then there's like the peel of a grape. The peel of a grape, there's a peel, but if you pick it up, you could see the grape inside a little bit, right? So the animal soul of a Jew has a Klippa, which is much thinner. And therefore, it allows some raw goodness that does good, not an ego that does good, goodness that does good. That's what happens in the Jew, in the animal soul of a Jew. Let's continue reading. Because in the case of a Jew, this animal soul of Klippa is from a derivative called Kelipah's Noga, bright Klippa. All right? We're not going to define these terms now, but there's one level of Klippa is called Klipah's Noga. Klipah's Noga means a bright Klippa. It's a Klippa, it hides God, but it's some brightness, some light filters through, which contains some easily accessible sparks of good too, resulting in natural positive character traits. So the Jew not only could do good, but is capable of pure good pulsing through its animal soul, his animal soul or her animal soul. Let's continue reading. This form of Klippa is a result from the secret of the biblical tree of knowledge of good and evil. All right, we're not going to get bothered by that, but this condition where there's Klippa, but the Klippa allows some pure good godliness to filter through, that's from the Kabbalistic secret of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. We have 3 minutes left. And I want to conclude the last few lines of the Tanya. But these last few lines of the Tanya are very controversial. And I want to be very upfront with you, because I think you all deserve it. Tanya sometimes is heavy. The Tanya is a very raw book. It's very pure. The Alter Rebbe doesn't hide anything. It's the truth laid down not without any inhibition. And sometimes we could read something in Tanya that seems to be a bit controversial, could seem to be a little bit edgy. And there's been a claim, which was made by many anti-Semites, and very unfortunately, it's been picked up even by many Jews, some Jews, I won't say many, that the Tanya has some racist statements in it. All right? And what they mean is this end of chapter 1. We'll read it. So therefore, some people consider this controversial. In my opinion, it's not controversial. The only reason why people think it's controversial is because they don't know what the Alter Rebbe is saying. And they don't understand terms. But it's taken this way. You know, there was a Jew who told me, it was very painful to hear. A Jew told me, here in Michigan, that his rabbi told him that he shouldn't learn Tanya because it's a racist book. And it bothered me a lot. You know, a rabbi is saying such a thing. My point is not to be critical, but my point is Judaism deserves our patience to try to understand it and not to shut down the second we hear something that maybe seems to be making us feel uncomfortable. There are 3 ways, and I'll just tell you this. Judaism has a lot of statements that we love, and Judaism has a lot of statements that are a little bit edgy and can get us nervous and maybe don't fit in with modern sensibilities, or at least we don't understand how they fit in with modern sensibilities. There are 3 ways how to approach this. Whenever anybody learns, I've experienced all 3 of these, both in myself and also by teaching others. I see how other people react. How do you react when you read something which is a little bit controversial? One reaction is you shut down right away. You shut down. And this is a racist statement. I have no tolerance for anything which seems to be racist or phobic or misogynistic. I don't know what. I'm done, and I'm not learning this or from this rabbi ever again. That's one reaction. And that reaction exists. Reaction number 2 is to say, you know what? It's racist. It's racist. But these were rabbis who lived 500 years ago. You know, quotes from the Talmud. Quotes from the Talmud are 1,500 years old. They were very bright people and big rabbis, but 1,500 years ago, they were pretty primitive. were a lot more progressive than they were then. And so they were racist then, big deal, So I'll study it, but, I'll reject, we accept the fact. Some people, this is another reaction. They were just a bunch of primitive racists. So, yeah, I don't mind studying it, There's a lot of people like that, Okay. The third reaction is, which is the healthy reaction, is to take it with maturity, intellectual maturity, which means when I read a statement from Torah, it doesn't have to fit my box. It doesn't have to make sense to me right away. It's the opposite. Torah doesn't need to fit into my box. I'm trying to broaden my horizons. And when you broaden your horizons, you will read stuff which you don't understand. So Torah deserves our humility and our patience to read it and to try to understand it. And if we don't understand today, we'll try again tomorrow, and to simply have the patience. But this is our Torah. And this is what we gave up our lives for. And this is what we live for. And we say it every single time we read the Torah in a synagogue. This is a Torah of peace. And the Torah is a Torah of life. And the Torah is a source of good. This isn't just a human old text which has human flaws. This is holy. And it deserves our time and attention to try to make sure we understand it. After this whole big introduction, what already does Tanya say now? I actually don't think you'll find it that jarring because of how we've read already. We've studied properly the past few lines. I'll first tell you outside. The Tanya basically concludes its previous statement. Jews are an anomaly. Jews have an animal soul which is motivated by an ego, which this is not big news. I'm saying we all understand that that's how nature functions. And the Alter Rebbe told us Jews are a little bit of an anomaly. We have some pure goodness that also pulses through this animal soul. For the most part, it's just an ego with all of the stuff that egos do, but then it has some pure goodness that filters through. And the Alter Rebbe now says, but Gentiles don't have that. Gentiles are 100% ego. Which again, doesn't mean that they don't do good. They could do a tremendous amount of good. But the pure goodness that every Jew is naturally born with, to be benevolent and compassionate, that non-Jews don't have. But this is not being critical of non-Jews. This is not an indictment on non-Jews. We're just stating the facts, right? We're not condemning non-Jews. We're not saying non-Jews are evil. We're not saying non-Jews don't do good things. Not at all. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. But the language sometimes could throw us off a little bit. All right, so let's read. And I want you to know feel free to ask questions. All right, we all deserve to know this. And I'll just tell you something. I'm not here to defend the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe doesn't need me to defend him. And really, these are quotes from the Talmud. The Talmud definitely doesn't need my defense. I'm not here to defend Tanya. I'm not here to defend Judaism. I'm not here to defend God. That's not my business. All right. And frankly, they don't need me for that. But I'm here to explain it to you. Let's understand what the Tanya is saying. Let's understand what the Tanya is not saying. Let's read 29. Page 29. This is not the case with the souls of the nations of the world, which stem from the three other impure klipos that are devoid of any good, meaning that it's pure ego, as stated in Eitz Chaim, section 49, chapter 3. Okay, so this is not the Alter Rebbe's idea. This is an idea from Kabbalah, that with all other people, all the nations of the world, which are not Jews, they have an animal soul, which is totally Klippa. There's no awareness of God. There's no even that a little bit of a sense of raw, pure goodness pulsing through the animal soul of all people besides Jews. And therefore, they're motivated purely by an ego. Let's continue reading. As stated in the Zohar, all good that the nations do, they do for themselves, meaning with selfish motives. And in the Talmud says, on its commentary on the verse, the kindness of the nations is sinful, that all the charity and kindness done by the nations of the world is only done for their own self-glorification. Do the people of the world do good? Yes, lots of good. But it's an ego-based good, not a good-based good. Is that a problem? No, it's just a fact. Just a fact. In the world, 99% of the time, people do good, people do lots of good. It's an ego-based good. Only a Jew is capable, not only a Jew, there's one caveat to this whole statement, but with a Jew, every Jew is capable of, doesn't mean that they do it always, but every Jew is capable of compassion and benevolence. And it's not compassion which is motivated by the ego, it's compassion based because there's actually just a force of raw goodness within the Jew. Now, there's one caveat. And the Alter Rebbe doesn't mention it here, but the Alter Rebbe mentions it later on in Tanya. Every rule has an exclusion to the rule. So non-Jews, for the general part, the rule is, as we say over here, have an animal soul, and everything that this person does is motivated by their ego, and the ego does a lot of good things, also does a lot of bad things, okay, like all human beings. But then there's something called, in Hebrew, it's called Chasidei Umot Ha'olam, which we translate in English to righteous Gentiles. And righteous Gentiles is the exclusion. And these are Gentiles or non-Jews. By the way, Gentiles is not a negative word, just by the way. It's just a word. It's a word which means people which are not Jews. All right. I'm not using any of these terms in a negative form. There are Gentiles which actually do have an animal soul, which has a lower level of Klippa, similar to the animal soul of Jews, and therefore they do good, motivated purely by good. And of course, the example that we saw of this, of the righteous Gentiles, was by the Holocaust. We saw non-Jews which did unbelievable acts of sacrifice, and there's no way to explain that as motivated by an ego. Was motivated simply by a force of good within these people that made them risk life and limb. The Rebbe spoke about many of the founding fathers as righteous Gentiles. But that's the exclusion to the rule. The rule, generally speaking, is everybody in the world, everything in this world is motivated by an ego. They could do a lot of good. I know some people are going to take this, are not going to like that I'm saying this, but dogs are very nice. Dogs don't hurt anybody, in general, right? And dogs are such good companions and give us so much love. But let's be real about it. It's a lot of good motivated by their ego. That's the reality. That is the reality. Dogs are not altruistic. I know some of us don't like accepting this, but this is the reality. Ask any scientist. Ask anybody who's thought about this stuff. And the Alter Rebbe is saying a Jew is unique. A Jew actually does have a little bit. Generally speaking, we also have animal souls which are full of an ego. But the Klippa level is a little bit toned down, which allows some pure goodness to filter through and allows us to do good. And not just that we do good, but to be purely motivated by good, which means to do an act of goodness. And we never ask ourselves, where am I in the picture? What do I get from this? It's pure good and we risk it. And so that is, let's summarize. Chapter 1, we just got introduced to the two souls, and the Alter Rebbe told us we all have an animal soul, which is motivated by an ego, and that is one soul and one life. That's one life that we all live, a life motivated purely by ego.
Rabbi,
that's the beginning point and the ending point.
Rabbi,
And with that, let's take some questions. And I want to thank you all for joining. Thank you. I'm sorry for going over time. Okay, let's take some questions. And if there's anything which is a little bit heavy and needs clarification, I'm here all night. Don't worry. Okay, go ahead, Dr. Joel.
and this simple thing, when they talk about the souls of nations, they're really not talking about the soul of a nation. They're talking about the souls of the people in the nation. Is that correct?
Right,
I just
right.
want to get that straight. Okay, no, that's all.
So, right. So souls of non-Jews, just all other people, right?
Okay.
Let me actually put it this way. What we say about non-Jews is not controversial. Every social scientist will tell you the exact same thing. The controversial part is what we say about Jews. That Jews are capable of goodness, which is not at all motivated by an ego. I don't think you'll get anthropologists or social scientists which will agree with that. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
The anomaly is not right. What's controversial, what's jarring, what's novel here is not. Yeah. This is not saying that we are more superior.
Right.
I think it's the opposite.
Yeah.
This puts the onus on us more.
Right. And this was a
Jews have a much higher expectation of goodness. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Julie. You're saying goodbye?
This is probably a ridiculous statement, but I just look at what's going on in the world and what's happening with our government and the people who are not making what we think to be the right decisions and so on, as far as, well, voters' rights. I mean, whatever's going on, I think of the souls of those people, and you talk about egos. I mean, it's unbelievable how this is relating to today and what's going on.
I don't want to comment on politics.
I understand.
But what I would say is, if you mention politics,
Yeah,
the best place, the best proof for what the Alter Rebbe says here
is there.
is politics, period. Not just in America, anywhere. If
Agreed.
you look at the politics of every single country,
Yeah.
politics on the one hand does so much good. They legislate, and especially in the modern age, there's so much justice, and there's even a lot of charity to other countries. There's a silver lining to every single policy ever made, to every single word ever uttered in the halls of politics. What's in it for me? Me as a politician, and what's in it for me as a country?
Absolutely.
Self-serving.
Yeah.
Every single dollar that America sends abroad has only one agenda and one agenda only. How it's going to better America. How it's going to put America at a more powerful position. This is not controversial.
Oh, I
You understand? This is but I don't want to comment on any specifics, and I'm sure you understand.
I know, but you're right. Yeah.
All right then.
Thank you
A
very
lot to
much.
think about. Thank you
A
so much.
lot to think about. This is a deep class. Yeah. All right, then.
Right.
Have a wonderful night, dear friends.
Thank you.
Goodbye. Feel better.
And and we'll see you all soon. Take care.
Okay, bye now.